Hi, I'm John F. Allen. And I'm R.J. Sullivan. And we're the Two Towers.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with regards to this film was the Easter eggs. So in the very beginning of the film, when Shazam is transferring, the wizard is transferring his powers to Billy, he talks about one of the original champion that they had chosen years ago. And that original champion was Teth Adam, also known as Black Adam. And this character is going to have his own film. And that film is going to star none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which he's been attached to this film for almost 10 years, believe it or not, because they had wanted to do the Shazam film a while ago, but there were other things that came up that delayed it or whatnot. I'm glad they finally got around to it, and I'm glad that they're now in production with the Black Adam film, because if you've seen the character of Black Adam and you see The Rock next to each other, it was like he was born to play it. It was almost as though they designed the character based off of The Rock, but of course that's not the case because the character's been around longer than The Rock's been living. So that being said, it's obviously not that the case here. But they did allude to it in the film, and that is a movie that'll be coming sooner rather than later. And then you have the Rock of Eternity, which is where the wizard transfers his powers to Shazam, Billy, to be Shazam. And that in and of itself is a mystical, magical nexus with regards to magic throughout the DC universe. So that in and of itself is an Easter egg. You have, of course, the 7 deadly sins, which also in the comics played a role in Wonder Woman mythos. So you're pulling on some of the mythologies, world mythologies, and blending them into this character, which is what ties the Shazam character to Wonder Woman in a lot of ways and makes those characters kind of blend well together. Shazam, if you didn't know, is an acronym. So basically, and I'm going to make sure that I have this right, but I think I remember.
This was a thing. This was a thing in the opening credits of the '70s show. They went over every week. It was another one of those things that got stuck in your head because they went through the 7 gods and in order.
Right. So here's the order of Shazam. S is for the wisdom of Solomon. H is for the strength of Hercules. Mm-hmm. A is for the endurance of Atlas. Z is for the power of Zeus. A is for the stamina of Achilles. And M is for the speed of Mercury. Now, it's interesting that these historical and mythological figures were actually chosen with regards to the character, because Solomon is a historical character from biblical times. Hercules is a Greek god. Atlas is a Greek god. Zeus is a Greek god. Achilles is a hero in the Greek mythologies. And Mercury is actually the Roman iteration of the Greek god Hermes, which is kind of, when you think about it, like they were looking, they were kind of grabbing around.
Right, yeah. And they weren't concerned with consistency.
Right, exactly. But that doesn't take away from the attributes that he possesses as Shazam with regards to these mythological and biblical characters. So that's interesting in and of itself. But back to the Easter eggs in the Rock of Eternity, when you first see Billy entering the throne room where he meets Shazam, the wizard, you see a glass dome with a worm in it. That worm is Mr. Mind, one of Shazam's arch nemesis. You also see a staff with a triangle shaped head to it, and that is the staff of Ibis, called the Ibis stick. And Ibis was a character from the Shazam mythos that was a sorcerer who carried that stick and was able to conjure up different magical powers from it. He was called Ibis the Invincible. He wore a turban and he had the Ibis stick, the whole nine. He was like a reincarnation of a prince from Egypt, sort of like a Mandrake the Magician type character. So you had his staff there. So there were these little Easter eggs that they put into play here. You also had Annabelle from the horror films. You had the Annabelle doll. This is should be of interesting note to you, RJ. When Billy fakes a break-in at the pawn shop and has the cops go in to investigate, as they're walking through the pawn shop, you can see on one of the shelves the Annabelle doll. So they threw that in as a little Easter egg. Also,
was that because wasn't one of the actors involved in Annabelle?
Yeah,
that's why they did this. I
remember.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with David Sandberg, if I'm not mistaken.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, he had some involvement in the anime in the Annabelle series. He was, let's see, he was the director for the Annabelle creation, the spinoff in the Conjuring universe, which Annabelle comes from. So as a horror cred, but yeah, that is one of his films, so that's why they put it in there. And you also have the Easter egg of Fawcett Central, which is the high school that Billy and Freddie go to. Of course, we had mentioned before, Fawcett Comics originally published the Captain Marvel, aka Shazam comics, before DC bought the rights to the character. Well, that's
the one I can say I caught.
Right. The character, he originally lived in Fawcett City, which, is a made-up city based off the name of the publisher. And so they gave you this little nod by naming the high school after that. But the film is based in Philadelphia. And when they were in the Rock of Eternity trying to get out, Billy and the other kids, they opened up a door. That would have been Eugene who opened up that other door, and you saw 3 crocodile men sitting at a table playing cards. This is a reference to the evil crocodile men and Sobek, who was a villain in the Shazam mythos. And in the very beginning, when young Billy was with his mother before he was separated from her and became an orphan, he was at the carnival and he wanted a tiger. He wanted his mother to win a tiger for him. And then when he was Shazam later on in the film and he was fighting Savannah and the 7 deadly sins, he protected a young kid and gave them a stuffed tiger so that it could calm them down and be there, as a safety net for them in this turbulent time that they were dealing with all of the sins going around and breaking stuff and all that was going on. This is a reference or nod to Tawny, the Talking Tiger, which is a character that is featured in the comics and was featured on the animated Shazam show. So that in and of itself is a little nod, Easter egg, that they could open up later on for other films if they wanted to. I don't think they need to, but it was just nice that they did. One thing to note is that Shazam 2 is slated for 2022, November 4th of 2022. Let's keep our fingers crossed that keeps the production schedule based on everything else going on with our global pandemic that we're dealing with. But Superman and other DCEU Justice League members may make cameo appearances in the Black Adam film, and that will also may include a Superman and Justice Society cameo. Black Adam probably won't appear in the Shazam films until probably Shazam 3, because they agreed that they wanted Black Adam to have his own film because he's too big of a character. And of course you've got The Rock playing him. So definitely that was considered, with regards to putting the film together, which makes sense. I mean, he's a box office draw, and to have him just as the villain and not have his own film establishing his backstory when he's such an important character to the franchise would be a waste. And it also allows DC to introduce new characters through that film that they can spin off into other films later on down the line. So now that we've talked about the Easter eggs, what I wanted to say is to go back to what I said initially. This film is a departure from the dark tone of some of the other films in the DCEU categories of films or slate of films. And I think that it is a welcome deviation from that tone. And it hits its mark. I left the theater after seeing this film satisfied. I felt like I got my money's worth. I felt like all the production was great. I'm not saying it's a perfect film. It has its flaws, but the heart of this film in the chemistry of the actors and performances, as well as, for the most part, most of the special effects. Couple of them were like, I see what you did there. You kind of saved a little money, but other than that, I think that this film really hit its mark. It's one of my favorite DCEU films, and I can't wait for the sequel. What do you think, RJ?
Yeah, I got a few thoughts. Okay, so going through your Easter eggs, I am only the most casually familiar with Captain Marvel and Shazam. Like I said, I've only got a couple of the comic books. I was, I guess, as regular a viewer of the live action show as any other kid my age. It was sort of the thing you watched. So they were a pretty deep cut for me. I missed most of them. I did catch the reference to Fawcett Central. It's funny. We paused the movie. It just happened to be a still picture of Fawcett Central on the back wall while they're in the cafeteria, and I went, "Hi, I see what you did there." So, most of these I didn't catch because I just was unaware of the deeper mythos. I was aware of the Shazam family. I was aware that Mary, who turned into what they credit as female superhero or something, was supposed to, her name was Mary Marvel back in the day. And I was aware of some of the other Shazam extended family that had been around on and off in the comics. I think I'd seen some ads where they would show like the whole lineup. I seem to remember there was some old guy there in the middle of all of it. And I was never entirely sure what that was about. So as a comic collector, but as someone who was pretty casual about Shazam, a lot of this I thought went pretty deep. Like the extra scene at the end, and of course, like most of these, there is a cookie credit scene. I totally didn't get the deeper meaning. I knew that there was one. I knew that the Shazam fans totally understood it, but it just kind of went over my head. I had seen interpretations of the room where Billy visits when he's having his mystical moments, I guess. And so I knew that representation was pretty accurate. I agree. The seven deadly sins and their representation they were pulling pretty hard from that Sandman Interview with the Vampire program. You know, there's a whole lot of things breaking into fine brown dust and floating around everywhere. It got kind of obnoxious after a while. But my personal experience with this movie was actually quite personal in some ways. My wife was very sick last fall. We rented this movie as a family at a time when things were not very bright for us. We really needed a lighthearted distraction at the time, and this movie really filled that void that we really needed here. So I will go forward with very fond memories of having rented this and watched it at a time when there weren't that many bright spots going on. Jumping ahead, you know, my wife is over that and she's doing a whole lot better, but at the time we just didn't know what the future held and things were looking pretty bleak. So I'm very much I will look at this as a movie that we watched an upsetting time that kind of helped us forget about it for a while, which I think is kind of the tone that it's kind of perfect for this. If you're looking for something that will seriously help you escape from some upsetting stuff, or if you just need to have a good laugh or something that's going to help you forget for a while, like, you know, say what's going on right now. This definitely hits the mark. I mean, I find it interesting that there's a certain irony to the fact that Captain Marvel was a competitor's product that DC tried to remove from the market and kind of bury. I mean, they wanted to remove it and make sure that it could never be brought back there for a while. And then eventually they ended up purchasing the character outright and then trying to figure out what to do with it. For those that want a deeper look at that, I do want to give a shout out to a fellow by the name of Bob Chipman, who has several YouTube shows. One of which is he's better known as Movie Bob, and one of his shows is called The Big Picture. He's done several videos on Captain Marvel and Shazam, and he gets into that deep history, summarizes it quite nicely for those that want to kind of get a quick overview of all the crazy political shenanigans that were going on. That's a really good source. I do enjoy watching Movie Bob, and I follow his stuff regularly. But on this topic, he really summarizes it quite nicely. But coming back to what I was saying, it's ironic that DC tried to kind of erase this hero for a few decades, and then when their movie franchise was kind of struggling and they were trying to find a direction, now he's kind of become one of their major hits that's helped get them back on track again. And I find that kind of interesting. You know, sometimes you don't know what's going to resonate with people, and I just wonder what the conversations were in the back rooms about when Superman and Batman weren't doing what they expected. It's like, okay, what can we do? And then they went with Shazam, and it ended up working. Are we still here? Uh-oh.
We got you. It ended up working, and then it cut off.
Oh, you can cut it right there.
Right, exactly. So
yeah, I just said it ended up working. It ended up working quite well, was what I actually said, and then there was a long pause. So are we still recording now?
Yeah, okay. We're still recording now. So
all right. Well, I was done. So you can cut all this out, and then you can jump in.
Okay, sounds good. I will cut in right now. Another thing that this film does, it sets up the sequels pretty nicely with regards to the mythos and the comics as they've been re-envisioned. So just to let you know, there are 7 magic lands, parallel dimensions, that are accessible through the Rock of Eternity. And that's the game lands, the wild lands, the dark lands, the fun lands, the monster lands, and the earth lands, which is presumably Earth in and of itself. So there's a lot to play around with the modern mythos regarding the Shazam character. But since we're talking about the character in relation to Superman and other DC characters, just so you know, back in the day when Captain Marvel as a comic book character was eclipsing Superman in popularity and sales, DC didn't like it. They decided that they were copying Superman and that it was some kind of copyright infringement. They fought. It was a big old battle. Eventually, Fawcett ran out of money, ran out of desire to keep the character, and the character was tied up in litigations where it couldn't be published one way or the other. So DC swooped in and said, you know what, we're just going to take the character as our own. And then they just said, well, you know what, let's reintroduce this character and let's have him be a rival to Superman. And they have had so many clashes in the comics over the years that it became like a cliche as far as the Superman versus Shazam battles. They had an episode of the Justice League animated series where they fought. They had an actual short animated film where they fought. They fought in numerous issues of DC Comics Presents, and there was a big Treasury edition that showed Superman versus Shazam, and it had Supergirl and Mary Marvel get into it. So it's an interesting dynamic. But as it relates to this film, one of the things I thought was kind of cool was at the very end of this film, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but it's been out for a while. So at the very end of this film, Freddie Freeman is in the cafeteria and he's with Shazam. And Shazam finally is acknowledging that he knows Freddie and that they're friends or whatnot, and all the other students in the school are there with their mouths open like, oh my God, I can't believe that you know Shazam. And as they're talking, then Shazam says, well, I just wanted to do something special for my buddy Freddie here. We've got another special guest. And that special guest turned out to be Superman, who walked with the lunch tray to the table where Freddie was sitting. Freddie, being a big Superman fan, just lost his shit, and it was like an awesome moment. It tied in the greater DCEU with the Shazam film without actually having to have a interaction cameo, which I thought was kind of neat. Now, one of the reasons why you didn't see Henry Cavill actually appear from the neck up is because at the time they were renegotiating his contract, which they have done, which I'll talk about in a moment. And he still had his mustache from Mission Impossible, which he was under obligation to keep and could not shave off. So that's called mustache.
I love that.
It's crazy. But they have since renegotiated Henry Cavill's contracts, and he will be starring again as Superman in the DC films that are upcoming in cameo roles, which I think is interesting because even though RJ and I are apart on the Man of Steel, I liked it more than he did, although I don't think it was barely a good film, but and that's barely, and I'm someone who actually liked it. So that being said, it wasn't Henry Cavill's fault that film, Man of Steel, wasn't a better film. It was not the actor's fault whatsoever. He's a great Man of Steel. He's a great Superman. He just needs the writing. And I think that having him as a cameo in these other films will give people palate cleansing of Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and the Justice League, which technically his iteration of Superman in the Justice League was much more in line with what fans really wanted to see from the character and from him acting as the character. But of course, there was the Mustache Gate. But I digress. Hopefully, with these cameos in these upcoming films, we'll be able to get a bit more out of Henry Cavill's performances, and it'll be more true to the character and what fans want to see, and will eventually lead into other Superman films down the line. This fan is hoping for that. But all of those things being said, I really enjoyed this film. I think that I would definitely recommend, if you haven't seen it by now, which I would hope that you have, but if you haven't, do yourself a favor, go ahead and check it out. Now, the costumes had some muscle padding, and a lot of people wanted to talk about that, and they were, I think they were reaching to try and find the things negative that they could say about the film, because some people just hate DC altogether, and some people just hate this character altogether. But that all being said, yeah, it was kind of kooky, but you know what? That didn't really bother me, because otherwise the design of the costumes I thought was really great. I mean, the material, the actual way that the thunderbolt, the lightning bolt symbol was represented, it glowed. It was really something that made the costume stand out from other superhero costumes in that way. So, I was pleased with that. I was pleased with the cinematography. There were a couple of special effects with the CGI that looked like, yeah, you guys tried to try to save a little money, and it shows. But it wasn't too terrible that it was just like, making me want to, toss the toss the remote control at the television. It wasn't that deep. So I'm ready to give my rating for this film, and I'm going to give it 4 towers out of 5, and I would have given it 4.5, but again, there were those little flaws in it that didn't necessarily, and don't get me wrong, I really liked the film. It didn't make it bad at all. It was just that was keeping me from giving it a 4.5, but it is definitely a solid 4 out of 5 towers that I'm giving this film. What about you, RJ?
Yeah, I'm coming in at 4 also. I gotta come back to what you about people trying to criticize about this movie. I hadn't heard that about the padded costume, and I'm like, really? Come on. I mean, some movies I don't think strive for greatness, and that's okay. I think they just strive to be very good, and that's how I read this movie, kind of like I would compare it to like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Adventures in Babysitting or something. It's just a fun couple hours. You put it on, you watch it, you forget your troubles for a while, and then you move on with your day. It's not striving, for a Spider-Man 2 or a Superman the movie kind of greatness. It's just striving to kind of help you forget your worries, enjoy yourself, have a good time, and then get on with your life afterwards. And this is exactly that. So when I say I'm giving it a 4 out of 5, I'm saying I think that's what it aimed for, and I think it absolutely hit the target exactly with the lightning bolt, if you get my drift. So I think that criticizing the padded costume is kind of missing the point. That's why I was laughing at that earlier. I'm like, you all get this is supposed to be a comedy, right? So if you're coming at it just looking to have a good time, I think I made similar comments about the Harley Quinn movie. As a matter of fact, I don't find them very comparable. They're both kind of true. Neither of them were really trying to be great movies. They were trying to be really good movies, and they both did exactly what they wanted to do. And if you're taking it too seriously and you're just looking to have a good time, this I don't think you can do much better than this. So yeah, absolutely. I give this a 4 out of 5, and I would call that my highest recommendation for a movie of this sort.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to our show, and I encourage you to like this episode in the give it a thumbs up if you did like it, and please subscribe so that you can catch every episode as it airs. We again thank you for all of your support. We want to hear from you, so please comment, leave us a comment, and let us know what you thought about Shazam. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did the padded costumes bug you? Are you a fan of the character from the comics and caught all the Easter eggs and references? Did anyone or is anyone of our age remember that 70s show, the television, not that 70s show, but the show Shazam from the 70s? So
we gotcha.
Yeah, so let us know about that. We love to hear what you have to say. Let your nerd flag fly. And that's it. That's all we have until next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.